The most dangerous mistake an officer can make isn't breaking the law. It's deciding who deserves the law before learning the truth. The first rays of morning sunlight stretched across the quiet suburban street as if nothing extraordinary could possibly happen there. Birds circled lazily above rows of carefully trimmed maple trees. Sprinklers whispered across emerald lawns. A newspaper rested untouched beside a white mailbox. It looked like the kind of neighborhood where everyone recognized every face and every driveway told a familiar story. A black SUV rolled slowly toward the end of the cul-de-sac before coming to a smooth stop beside a modest two-story brick home. The driver stepped out carrying nothing more than a small leather overnight bag. Marcus Ellison paused for a moment at the edge of the driveway and inhaled the crisp morning air. After nearly a week of meetings in Washington, long flights, and sleepless nights, home felt quieter than he remembered. The silence was comforting. There were no flashing lights, no conference rooms, no microphones, no cameras waiting for a statement. Just home. He smiled faintly as he reached into his jacket pocket, searching for his house keys. Before he could take another step, the sharp sound of tires turning into the street interrupted the peaceful morning. A marked patrol cruiser slowed beside the driveway. Officer Ryan Keller watched Marcus through the windshield for several seconds before opening the driver's door. His eyes immediately focused on the unfamiliar man standing beside the property. Morning patrol had taught Ryan one lesson he trusted more than any policy manual. If something felt wrong, act first. Ask questions later. He stepped onto the sidewalk. "Sir." Marcus turned politely. "Good morning, officer." Ryan didn't return the greeting. "What are you doing on this property?" Marcus looked briefly toward the front door before answering. "I live here." Ryan glanced at the large brick house, then back at Marcus. "You live here?" "Yes." Ryan studied Marcus again. His travel clothes looked expensive. The overnight bag appeared well-made. Everything about him suggested confidence. But Ryan had already made up his mind. "I've never seen you in this neighborhood." Marcus remained calm. "I've been away on business." Ryan folded his arms. "Business where?" "Washington." "What kind of business?" Marcus smiled politely. "Official business." The answer irritated Ryan more than it satisfied him. Official. People like using words that sounded important. Ryan had heard every excuse imaginable during his years on patrol. He took another step closer. "I'm going to need identification." Marcus nodded without hesitation. "Of course." He slowly reached toward the inside pocket of his jacket. Ryan's voice immediately hardened. "Stop." Marcus froze exactly where he stood. Ryan pointed toward the overnight bag. "Hands where I can see them." Marcus calmly raised both hands. "No problem." Several nearby neighbors had begun looking through their windows. One elderly couple paused while walking their dog. A delivery driver slowed his van. Quiet curiosity spread across the street. Ryan noticed the attention but didn't seem bothered by it. "If this is your house," Ryan said, "tell me the address." Marcus answered without hesitation. Ryan looked at the house again, then back at Marcus. His expression didn't change. "I can verify that later." Marcus kept his voice steady. "You can also verify my identification." Ryan ignored the suggestion. Instead, he moved behind Marcus. "I'm placing you in investigative detention until I figure out what's going on." Marcus slowly turned his head. "Officer, I believe this misunderstanding can be resolved in less than a minute if you'll simply allow me to show you who I am." Ryan pulled a pair of handcuffs from his duty belt. "I'll decide how this gets resolved." The metallic click echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Several neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus did not resist. He did not argue. He simply looked toward the front door of his own home, now only a few steps away, yet suddenly impossibly distant. As Ryan secured the handcuffs around his wrists, Marcus spoke in the same calm voice he had used from the beginning. "Officer Keller." Ryan frowned. "I never told you my name." Marcus met his eyes without the slightest hint of fear. "No." Marcus replied quietly. "But before this morning is over, you're going to wish you had taken 10 seconds to learn mine." Officer Ryan Keller tightened his grip on Marcus Ellison's arm as curious eyes gathered behind curtains and half-open front doors. The peaceful neighborhood no longer felt quiet. It felt like a stage, and everyone had become an audience. Marcus never resisted. His overnight bag remained on the driveway exactly where he had set it down. The house keys still rested somewhere inside his jacket pocket. Only inches away, yet impossibly out of reach. Ryan guided him toward the patrol cruiser. "You should have identified yourself sooner," Ryan said, opening the rear door. Marcus looked at him calmly. "I tried. You answered questions with more questions. I answered every question you asked." Ryan ignored the remark. The steel door shut with a heavy thud. Inside the cruiser, Marcus sat upright, his hands resting quietly in front of him despite the handcuffs. His breathing never changed. His expression remained composed, as though he understood something Ryan did not. Ryan returned to the front seat and reached for the radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. The speaker crackled. "Go ahead, Unit 12. I've got one male detained for possible trespassing and failure to identify." Marcus quietly spoke from the back seat. "I never refused to identify myself." Ryan continued as if he hadn't heard him. "I'm conducting further investigation." Dispatch paused for a moment. "Copy. Any confirmation from the homeowner?" Ryan glanced toward the house. "Negative. The homeowner's vehicles appear to be on the property." Ryan frowned. "I'm aware." He ended the transmission before another question could follow. Marcus watched the neighborhood through the cruiser window. An elderly woman slowly stepped onto her porch. A teenage boy stood beside his bicycle, staring silently. Across the street, a security camera pointed directly toward the driveway where the encounter had begun. Ryan noticed it too. He simply looked away. "You still have time," Marcus said quietly. Ryan started the engine. "Time for what?" "To verify who I am." Ryan laughed once. "I've heard that line before." "It isn't a line." The patrol car rolled away from the curb. As they turned the corner, Marcus looked back one final time at his own home disappearing behind rows of trees. Meanwhile, only a few miles away, a woman stepped into the residence through the unlocked front door. She called out, "Marcus." No answer. She noticed the overnight bag sitting alone beside the walkway. Then she noticed fresh tire marks leading away from the driveway. Her expression changed instantly. She reached for her phone. Back inside the cruiser, Ryan removed Marcus's wallet from the property bag. He opened it only halfway before stopping. Several identification cards were neatly arranged inside. One card carried a dark blue federal seal. Ryan barely looked at it. Instead, he closed the wallet and tossed it onto the passenger seat. "I'll deal with that later." Marcus watched the motion in silence. 10 seconds. That was all it would have taken. 10 seconds to read a name. 10 seconds to avoid everything that was about to follow. As the cruiser merged onto the main road, Ryan's radio came alive again. "Unit 12, dispatch requesting immediate status update." Ryan reached for the microphone. Before he could answer, a second transmission interrupted the first. Its tone was different, more urgent. "Unit 12, stand by. We've just received an incoming call regarding your detainee. Do not leave your current location until further instructions. Repeat, stand by immediately." Ryan Keller stared at the radio for a brief moment before pressing the transmit button. "Unit 12, go ahead." Static filled the speaker. Then dispatch answered. "Unit 12, confirm your exact location." Ryan glanced at the street ahead. East Brook Avenue, heading south. Another pause followed, long enough to feel unusual. "Copy. Remain where you are." Ryan frowned. "I'm transporting a detainee." "Negative, Unit 12. Do not continue transport until we complete identity verification." Ryan looked into the rearview mirror. Marcus sat exactly as before, calm and silent, watching the passing neighborhoods disappear behind tinted glass. Ryan lowered the microphone. "They're being overly cautious." Marcus spoke without emotion. "They're trying to prevent a mistake." Ryan accelerated instead. "I've already made my decision." The cruiser rolled through the next intersection. Back at dispatch, two operators exchanged uneasy glances. One of them stared at a computer monitor displaying an incoming priority notification. The message had originated from a federal database. Identity verification request. Possible high-level federal official. Do not escalate detention. The dispatcher immediately reached for the radio again. "Unit 12, acknowledge immediately." Ryan sighed before answering. "I'm listening. We need you to verify the identification found in the subject's wallet." "I'll do that at the station." "Negative. Verify it now." Ryan looked toward the closed wallet lying on the passenger seat. He tapped it once with his fingertips. "It can wait." Marcus quietly watched the wallet. So close. Only a few inches separated Ryan's assumptions from the truth. The dispatcher tried again. "Unit 12, This instruction is coming from command. Ryan's patience disappeared. Command wasn't standing where I was. He released the transmit button. Silence returned. Marcus finally spoke. You still haven't looked at the identification. I don't need paperwork to recognize suspicious behavior. Marcus slowly turned toward the window. No. He paused. You recognize suspicion. You don't recognize people. Ryan chose not to answer. A few miles away, Marcus's wife had already made her second phone call. The first had been to local police. The second went somewhere far beyond the city. Her words were brief. My husband never arrived inside the house. What is his name, ma'am? Director Marcus Ellison. The voice on the other end became noticeably quieter. Please stay where you are. Within moments, the information traveled through secure federal channels. Names were verified. Travel records confirmed. Vehicle registrations matched. Home address matched. Flight itinerary matched. One final notification appeared on another federal screen. Director not at expected location. Last known contact. Local law enforcement. Inside the cruiser, Ryan finally picked up the wallet. Marcus watched without speaking. Ryan opened it halfway. His eyes passed over several credit cards. A driver's license. Then a dark leather credential wallet bearing a gold federal seal. He barely opened it. Instead, he closed everything again. Fancy prop. Marcus slowly closed his eyes. It wasn't a prop. Ryan tossed the wallet back onto the passenger seat. You'll explain it downtown. At that exact moment, dispatch transmitted one final message. Its calm professional tone had completely disappeared. Unit 12, stop your vehicle immediately. Ryan reached for the radio, but hesitated. The dispatcher continued before he could interrupt. This order comes directly from federal command. Do not proceed to the station. Repeat, stop your vehicle immediately. Federal personnel are now responding to your location. Ryan Keller stared at the radio in disbelief. Federal command? For a trespassing suspect? He pressed the transmit button again. Dispatch, you're overreacting. I'll sort this out at the station. Before anyone could respond, he released the microphone and switched the radio volume down. Not completely, just enough to silence the constant interruptions. In the back seat, Marcus Ellison watched the movement without saying a word. Outside, traffic flowed as if nothing unusual was happening. School buses stopped at corners. Parents walked children across crosswalks. Morning commuters hurried toward another ordinary workday. No one passing the patrol car could have imagined that two entirely different worlds were about to collide. Several hundred miles away, inside a secure operations center in Washington, a conference room that had been quiet only moments earlier suddenly filled with urgency. A large digital map displayed a blinking location. Director Marcus Ellison. GPS signal active. Mobile device stationary. Local law enforcement contact confirmed. A senior federal supervisor looked around the room. When was his last scheduled check-in? 32 minutes ago. Has he answered any secure communications? No, sir. Local agency involved? Yes. The room fell silent. No one rushed to conclusions. No one raised their voice. They simply followed protocol. One supervisor nodded toward another officer. Notify the regional field office. Another replied immediately. They're already mobilizing. Black SUVs began leaving the federal parking structure one after another. No emergency lights. No sirens. Only quiet determination. Back inside the patrol cruiser, Ryan finally noticed several missed calls appearing on the dashboard computer. Dispatch. Watch commander. Dispatch again. Then another incoming request. He declined all of them. They're making this far more complicated than necessary, he muttered. Marcus finally broke the silence. Sometimes people call repeatedly because they're trying to stop a mistake before it becomes permanent. Ryan kept his eyes on the road. You really enjoy speaking in riddles. Marcus offered a faint smile. No. I've simply spent my career watching people ignore the obvious. Ryan shook his head. The obvious is that you refuse to cooperate. The obvious, Marcus answered quietly, is that you decided who I was before asking who I am. Those words lingered inside the cruiser. Ryan said nothing. At the same moment, the convoy of federal vehicles entered the city limits. Each driver received identical instructions. No confrontation. No unnecessary force. Protect the director. Preserve evidence. Coordinate with local command. One agent looked out the windshield. Do we know which officer made the arrest? The supervisor checked the incident log. Officer Ryan Keller. Another agent quietly added, "I hope he hasn't taken the suspect to the station." Seconds later, the supervisor's secure phone vibrated. He answered immediately. The voice on the other end spoke only one sentence. "The patrol vehicle is still moving." The supervisor looked toward the convoy ahead. "Increase pace." Meanwhile, Ryan turned onto the highway leading downtown. He never noticed the dark SUVs merging onto the same road several exits behind him. Marcus looked through the rear window. Far in the distance, a line of identical black vehicles appeared against the morning sun. He recognized them instantly. For the first time since the handcuffs had closed around his wrists, he quietly whispered to himself, "They found me." Ryan heard the words, but misunderstood them completely. He smiled with confidence. "No," he said. "They found you." The convoy closed the distance with quiet precision. No sirens pierced the morning air. No flashing red or blue lights announced their arrival. Only 4 identical black SUVs moved steadily along the highway, each maintaining the same measured speed, each carrying agents who understood that the next few minutes could determine far more than a single arrest. Inside the lead vehicle, Supervisory Special Agent Daniel Brooks studied the GPS display. They're less than 2 miles ahead. His partner looked up from a secure tablet. Director Ellison's credentials have been fully confirmed. Brooks nodded once. "What about the local department?" "The chief has just been notified." "And the arresting officer?" "Still transporting." Brooks looked through the windshield. "Let's make sure he doesn't reach the station." Meanwhile, Ryan Keller noticed the traffic beginning to slow. Construction? An accident? He couldn't tell. He glanced into the rearview mirror. Marcus remained exactly as he had since the handcuffs were fastened. Calm, patient, almost as though he already knew how this story would end. Ryan shook his head. "I've arrested people who acted confident before." Marcus met his eyes through the reflection. "Confidence isn't what you're seeing." "What is it?" "Certainty." Ryan smirked. "About what?" Marcus answered softly. "That the truth doesn't need to chase anyone." Before Ryan could respond, his dashboard radio erupted once again. "Unit 12. This time it wasn't dispatch. It was the watch commander." "Officer Keller, acknowledge immediately." Ryan pressed the microphone. "I'm here. Pull your vehicle over." "Why?" "That's an order." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I have control of the situation." "No," the commander replied firmly. "You don't." The transmission ended. Ryan stared ahead, irritated. No explanation. Just another order. He ignored it. Half a mile behind him, the federal convoy exited onto the same stretch of highway. Brooks immediately recognized the patrol cruiser. There, the 4 SUVs spread out. With practiced coordination. Not aggressively. Methodically. One moved into the left lane. Another stayed behind the cruiser. The remaining 2 positioned themselves farther back, creating a controlled perimeter without forcing any confrontation. Ryan finally noticed them in his mirrors. 4 black SUVs. All identical. All keeping pace. His confidence faded, if only for a second. "Who are they?" Marcus turned slightly toward the rear window. "I told you. They found me." Ryan's heartbeat quickened. He reached toward the passenger seat, picked up the leather credential wallet once more, and hesitated. For the first time all morning, he opened it completely. His eyes landed on the gold badge. Then the photograph. Then the title beneath the name. Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Marcus Ellison. Ryan read the words twice. Then a third time. The color slowly drained from his face. He looked into the mirror. Marcus wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He simply watched in silence. At that exact moment, the lead SUV accelerated, moved alongside the patrol cruiser, and a discreet electronic message flashed across its windshield in bright amber letters. "State Police ahead. Pull over immediately." For the first time that morning, Officer Ryan Keller realized the handcuffs were no longer the most dangerous thing inside his patrol car. Ryan Keller's hands tightened around the steering wheel. The credential was still open in his lap. The gold seal. The photograph. The title. Every detail was unmistakably authentic. For several long seconds, the only sound inside the patrol cruiser was the hum of the engine. Ryan looked into the rearview mirror once again. Marcus Ellison met his eyes with the same quiet composure he had shown since the encounter began. No anger. No satisfaction. Only silence. "You knew," Ryan finally said. Marcus answered without hesitation. "I knew who I was." Ryan swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" A faint sadness crossed Marcus's face. "I tried. The words landed harder than any accusation. Ryan remembered every moment outside the house, every interruption, every command, every time he had refused to listen. He remembered Marcus offering his identification. He remembered ordering him to stop. He remembered closing the credential wallet without reading it. Each memory arrived like another weight pressing against his chest. Before he could speak again, flashing blue lights appeared ahead. Not behind him. Ahead. State police vehicles had formed a controlled roadblock across the shoulder. Ryan slowly eased off the accelerator. The black SUVs surrounded the patrol car with remarkable discipline. No doors flew open. No weapons were drawn. Everything happened with calm precision. As the cruiser rolled to a complete stop, Agent Daniel Brooks stepped from the lead SUV. His dark suit moved gently in the morning breeze as he approached. Another 6 federal agents quietly positioned themselves nearby. Their attention was not focused on Marcus. It was focused on the patrol car. Brooks stopped beside the driver's window. His voice remained calm. "Officer Keller." Ryan lowered the window. "Yes. My name is Daniel Brooks." He displayed his credentials. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Ryan nodded silently. Brooks continued. "We're here for Director Marcus Ellison." Ryan looked back toward Marcus. The title still felt impossible to accept. Director. Not suspect. Not trespasser. Director. Brooks noticed the handcuffs through the rear window. His expression changed only slightly. "I need you to unlock the rear door." Ryan hesitated. Training, instinct, pride, everything inside him struggled against the moment. Then reality finally prevailed. He stepped out of the cruiser. The morning air suddenly felt heavier. Every movement seemed louder than before. He walked to the rear passenger door with trembling hands. The lock clicked. The door opened. Marcus stepped out slowly. His wrists remained secured. Brooks immediately approached him. "Sir." Marcus offered a small nod. "I'm all right." Brooks looked at the handcuffs. "Let's take care of that." One of the agents produced a handcuff key. Within seconds, the metal restraints fell away. The marks left on Marcus's wrists were faint, temporary, but everyone standing there understood that not every mark could be seen. Ryan stood several feet away, unable to find the words. Marcus gently rubbed his wrists before looking directly at him. There was no triumph in his eyes, only disappointment, the kind that came from seeing someone abandon fairness before discovering the facts. Agent Brooks turned toward Ryan. "Officer Keller." Ryan looked up. "The chief of police is on his way." Brooks paused for just a moment. "So is your body camera footage. Every second of it has already been secured." For the first time that morning, Ryan realized that this story was no longer about an arrest. It had become an investigation, and he was no longer the officer in control of it. The highway fell completely silent. Not because the traffic had stopped, because every person standing beside the patrol car understood that authority had just changed hands. Officer Ryan Keller remained motionless. The body camera clipped to the center of his uniform still blinked with its steady red light, recording every word, every decision, every assumption. Agent Daniel Brooks glanced toward one of the technicians who had arrived with the convoy. "The upload. Already synchronized." Ryan looked up. "You already have it?" Brooks nodded. "Automatic cloud backup." Ryan lowered his eyes. There would be no forgotten details. No missing minutes. No rewritten version of events. Only the truth. Marcus Ellison stood quietly a few feet away, flexing his wrists after the handcuffs had been removed. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The evidence was speaking for him. A few minutes later, another vehicle approached. This one carried the chief of police. Chief Harold Bennett stepped out before the SUV had fully stopped. His face revealed concern long before anyone spoke. He walked directly toward Brooks. "What happened?" Brooks handed him a tablet. The entire encounter. The chief pressed play. The screen showed Marcus standing peacefully outside his own home, offering to identify himself, trying to answer questions, being interrupted, ordered to stop reaching for his wallet, placed in handcuffs. Every second unfolded without interruption. No dramatic music, no commentary, just facts. The chief watched in complete silence. When the recording ended, he slowly lowered the tablet. He looked at Ryan. "Did you review his identification?" Ryan struggled to answer. "I intended to." "You intended to?" "I believe." The chief raised a hand. "No." His voice remained calm. "I asked what you did." Ryan swallowed. "I didn't." The admission lingered in the morning air. Marcus never looked away. Not because he wanted Ryan to feel ashamed. Because accountability required witnesses. The chief turned toward Marcus. Director Ellison. Marcus nodded politely. Chief, I owe you an apology. Marcus answered gently. I'll accept your apology. He paused. But this isn't only about me. The chief listened carefully. Marcus continued. If this could happen while I carried federal credentials, imagine how many ordinary citizens never get the chance to prove who they are. No one spoke. Even the federal agents remained silent. Because no report could improve upon that sentence. The chief slowly nodded. I understand. Marcus looked toward Ryan one final time. I never wanted an officer to lose his career. Ryan looked up, surprised. I wanted an officer to remember why he chose the badge. Those words struck harder than any formal reprimand. Brooks finally stepped forward. Chief Bennett, effective immediately, we'll begin a joint review of this incident. The chief answered without hesitation. You'll have our full cooperation. Ryan removed his patrol cap slowly. For the first time since putting on the uniform that morning, its weight felt unbearable. The badge on his chest had not changed, but what it represented suddenly had. As investigators began documenting the scene, the neighborhood security camera across from Marcus's home continued recording from afar. It had captured the beginning. The body camera had captured the middle. And now dozens of official witnesses would preserve the ending. The truth no longer depended on memory. It had become evidence. And evidence, unlike assumptions, never cared who wore the badge. The investigation began before the sun had reached its highest point. Evidence moved faster than rumors. The body camera footage was copied. Dispatch recordings were preserved. The neighborhood security cameras were secured. Radio transmissions were archived. Every minute of the morning now existed in multiple places, impossible to erase and impossible to reinterpret. Inside police headquarters, the atmosphere had changed completely. Conversations that normally filled the hallways had been replaced by quiet voices and closed office doors. Officer Ryan Keller sat alone in an interview room. His badge had not yet been removed. His firearm had already been surrendered. The empty space on his duty belt felt strangely unfamiliar. Across the building, Chief Harold Bennett met with federal investigators. No one argued jurisdiction. No one questioned authority. The only question that mattered was simple. What happened? Agent Daniel Brooks placed a tablet on the conference table. The evidence is consistent. He tapped the screen. Director Ellison attempted to identify himself multiple times. Another clip appeared. Ryan interrupting. Another. Ryan refusing to examine the credentials. Another. Dispatch ordering him to stop the transport. Another. Ryan continuing anyway. The room remained silent. Facts required no explanation. Chief Bennett slowly removed his reading glasses. I've worn this badge for 32 years. He looked around the table. The hardest cases are never the ones involving criminals. He paused. They're the ones involving our own failures. No one disagreed. At the federal field office, Marcus Ellison finally completed his formal statement. An attorney was present. So were investigators. The interview was surprisingly brief. Marcus answered every question with calm precision. What happened after the officer approached you? I complied. Did you resist? No. Did you refuse identification? I tried to present it. Did you ever threaten the officer? No. The investigator closed the folder. Thank you, Director. Marcus stood but remained by the window for a moment. Outside, the city continued its ordinary rhythm. People walked to work. Children laughed on the sidewalks. Life moved forward, unaware that a single decision had exposed something much larger than one traffic stop. Brooks entered quietly. Sir. Marcus turned. The chief has placed Officer Keller on administrative leave pending the investigation. Marcus nodded. I expected that. Brooks hesitated. Some people will say this case is about one officer. Marcus slowly shook his head. No. It's about one decision. He looked back through the glass. The moment someone stops seeing a person and starts seeing an assumption. Brooks remained silent, because there was nothing to add. Later that afternoon, Chief Bennett stood before the department. Uniformed officers filled the briefing room. No cameras. No reporters. Only the people who wore the same badge Ryan had worn that morning. The chief spoke slowly. Authority is never permission to stop listening. His eyes moved across the room. The public doesn't judge us by our best moments. He paused. They judge us by what we do when assumptions are easier than facts. No one looked away. Some officers lowered their heads. Others simply listened. Back across town, Marcus arrived home at last. The front door stood exactly as he had left it. His overnight bag still rested beside the porch. He picked it up quietly. For the first time that day, he was finally home. But he understood that the real journey had only begun. Because restoring trust always takes far longer than breaking it. Several weeks later, the headlines had already begun to disappear. News cycles moved on. Television cameras packed away. Social media found another story to chase. But inside the police department, the morning Officer Ryan Keller arrested Marcus Ellison had never truly ended. Every academy classroom now included the body camera recording. Not as a spectacle, as a lesson. The instructor always paused the video at the same moment. The instant Marcus reached for his identification, then the room would become silent. What should happen next? The answer was obvious. Verify. Listen. Slow down. See the person before making the decision. Across town, Marcus returned to his ordinary routine. He attended meetings, reviewed investigations, signed reports. His schedule looked almost identical to the one he had planned before that morning. The only difference was that strangers occasionally recognized his face. Some thanked him. Others simply nodded with quiet respect. Marcus accepted every gesture with humility. He never described himself as a victim. He never described himself as a hero. Whenever reporters asked whether he wanted justice, his answer remained the same. I wanted the truth to be seen. Nothing more. Nothing less. One afternoon, Chief Harold Bennett requested a private meeting. Marcus agreed. The two men sat across from each other in a quiet office overlooking the city. The chief placed a small wooden display box on the desk. Inside rested an old police badge. It belonged to his father. I've carried this for years, Bennett said softly, as a reminder that a badge isn't authority. He looked at Marcus. It's responsibility. Marcus nodded. My father taught me something similar. What was that? He said the strongest people are usually the last ones to remind you how much power they have. The chief smiled sadly. I wish more officers heard that before putting on the uniform. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Outside the window, patrol cars continued moving through the streets. Most officers would never meet Marcus Ellison. Most citizens would never know his name. Yet every interaction between a badge and a stranger would carry the same choice. Assumption, or understanding. Months later, Officer Ryan Keller's case reached its conclusion. The official findings were released. Policy violations had occurred. Required identification procedures had been ignored. Lawful verification opportunities had been repeatedly dismissed. The report never claimed anyone could read another person's heart. It simply documented the decisions that had been made and the consequences that followed. Marcus read the report once. Then he closed the folder. He did not celebrate, because accountability was never supposed to feel like victory. It was supposed to restore trust. As the sun set behind the city skyline, Marcus stood once more outside the home where everything had begun. The front porch looked exactly as it had that morning. Quiet, ordinary, peaceful. He looked toward the street for a brief moment before walking inside. The door closed gently behind him. The neighborhood returned to silence. Some people believe justice arrives with flashing lights, loud voices, or dramatic endings. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes justice arrives as a simple record of the truth, preserved long enough for everyone to see it. Because a badge may command authority, but only character earns trust. And on the day Ryan Keller judged a man before knowing his name, the law did not change. Only its true face was finally revealed.